Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is Chojin Sentai Jetman, brought to us by Bandai. The series that came before what we know in the US as the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Chojin Sentai Jetman ran in Japan from February of 91 to February of 92 for 51 episodes. There were actually two Super Sentai games made for the NES, one based off of this series and one based off the series we know as Power Rangers, which I will be covering in the near future. For this game though, you have 5 areas to choose from, and you have 5 Rangers to pick from, so you can pick any of the levels and any of the Rangers you want to play as, though if a Ranger loses all their health, they're eliminated, and you have to choose from one of the other Rangers available. The controls are simple. With your jumping and attacking, you are able to hold up an attack in order to do a kind of like jump kick, which is extremely useful, especially for those that end up using the lasers as their weapons. The guns just are weaker, they take more shots in order to defeat an enemy since you have range with them, but because they take so many shots, they're just not really that great to use, so thankfully you have that kick at your disposal to use to help you out. The game is pretty straightforward. The levels are just going from left to right, and when you make it to the end, you deal with a boss encounter, which we get to control the Jet Icarus, basically the Megazord of this particular incarnation. And I fully apologize if I say anything incorrectly about the series. It's something that I'm not as familiar with, I just know the little bit of information about it. For these giant boss encounters, you have to basically do a punching match. You do have special moves at your disposal, which is the meter at the bottom of the screen will slowly fill up as you defend moves, and when it fills up to each rank, you can do a different move. You gotta love the cool cutscene here though. We get to see the Icarus kind of come together with the various parts before we get control. Thankfully you can skip that though for the other times, and I will be doing that just to speed things up a little bit since it is the same each time, but still cool nonetheless. The enemies all kind of have like the same basic AI. They have a shoulder charge that they will do, which you can easily block, as well as they will have projectiles that they'll blast out. They always change poses when they're getting ready to do one of their blast moves, so you can kind of tell when it's coming, and then press down in order to defend. Once you have the meter filled up, you can press start at any point to use your special move, and it'll do quite a bit of damage. You can do it at any point as it's filling up. Each rank is just going to be slightly less efficient, so usually I just wait until it's all the way full in order to hit that max shot. With Area A complete, we're going to jump to Area B. Also changing up the Ranger, we're going to go over to the White Swan. White Swan is one of the characters that uses the pistol, the laser. Since that's not really that useful, I'm going to be using the jump kick, which is extremely efficient. It's as damaging as the sword is, as you can see. This game is actually pretty fun. The overall movement and stuff is very fluent, and the controls are pretty tight. You have a special move that you can pull off if you do have it. Located at the bottom part of the screen next to the life meter is that special symbol. You get that once per level, or you can sometimes find one scattered throughout the levels, and it just basically clears out the screen of the normal type enemies. None of the levels in the game are particularly long, and thankfully we have that full health replenishment after each one of the stages. We're nearing the end of Area B here, just a couple more enemies before we reach the end of the screen, and it's time to deal with the next boss. For this encounter, once again, do the same kind of strategy. Do a quick set of combo punches, then immediately duck. You can chase down the enemy, but once they stop moving, immediately duck again, because you're not going to be able to probably get your punch off before they end up getting their attack off. If they hit you with one of their like kind of shoulder blocks, it's not a big deal. Just block the rest of them, and that should start to fill that meter, and once it does, use it to finish off the enemy, and we're moving on to Area C. For Area C, we're going to pick Black Condor with the sword. Once again, you can use the sword or the kick. Either one is efficient when using him, or the Red Ranger, for example. That extremely useful kick can also be used while you're in the air, and it actually gives you a little hesitation that you can sometimes use to slow up a bit, to let like a bullet or something pass you by. If you run into any of those symbols to use your special move, you might as well use it, the one you have, and then pick up the other one, though we won't really need it throughout the rest of the level. We just have a little bit left to go. This boss, sometimes you can get stuck in a loop where you can keep mashing the attack button and just keep them from being able to attack, just because they're a little bit slower than some of the other enemies. They still have annoying moves like the claw hit punch that they do that you can block, as well as a shoulder tackle like they all do, but still, you can usually get them really close to the wall and just mash the attack button real fast to get rid of them. Onwards to Area D, and we're going to be using the owl, the yellow owl. Different move here, as you can see. It's similar to the blade as far as the damage it does, but it's a little bit of a different range. It's actually pretty efficient though. You can use either it or the kick, whichever one you prefer at this point. A little bit of a tight area, but thankfully not too bad to kind of run through and still deal with all these enemies. One guy in particular is going to chase me throughout this entire place until I finally get far enough away where he's off screen. You have a good amount of invulnerability time whenever you do take damage in the game. Use that to your advantage and run through some enemies, if possible, before it ends up running out. This is a pretty short stage, just like they all are, as we reach the end, and it's time for that next boss encounter. For this boss, instead of a shoulder tackle, he does have a punch that he does, but it works pretty much the same as he slowly slides across the screen. Block it a couple of times. If he ends up putting his arms in the air, block immediately as he's getting ready to do his giant blast. This boss can be a little bit relentless as far as attacking quickly. You just gotta get your openings and use them wisely. Whenever you fill up your meter, of course, use that to your advantage in order to do a lot of damage. Onwards to the second to last area of the game, Area E. Here we're going to be using the Blue Swallow as our character. Once again, the laser is what they use, so it's best just to use the kick. This level is a little bit annoying, and as you expected, as it's the fifth of the areas to travel to. Take the upper path if possible during this area, it's just a little bit easier. If you get too bombarded with enemies, of course you have your special move, use it to clear the screen at least, to think for a moment before continuing on. Be very careful in this corridor, just a lot of stuff going on in a tight space. Thankfully, we're right near the end, as I have only the 1 hit point left. That's what's fun about this game, is you end up having a pretty good amount of health. So running through it and trying to get through quickly is actually very enjoyable. Thankfully, our health doesn't carry over, though, to the boss encounter, or else we would be in trouble. For this boss, they use their giant trunk in order to run into you, like the shoulder tackle. You can block that, as well as, of course, another laser-like move that it uses. It's a little bit slower than the previous boss, so it's a bit easier to get your combos in. Like always, once you fill that meter up, use it, and finish off the fight. For the final level of the game, we're going to go back to the Red Hawk, the one we started with. Whichever one of them, though, you prefer, use that for the final stage. At the beginning part, there's a lot of lasers and the like. You can take your time slowly and just work your way, but I find myself taking damage that way just as much as if I just run through. So usually at the beginning of the stage, I just take a little bit of damage and use that invulnerability time to run on through those first few cannons. Be careful of the exploding plants. They do a spread shot when they blow up, and it goes pretty much everywhere, so you gotta make sure you're in between at least 2 of the bullets. Run along the bottom here, it's just easier to deal with these enemies. We are nearing the end though, thankfully, so not too much farther to go. Like always, if you get hit, just try to run through at least a few enemies. It's easy to get hit multiple times, though, in this tight area. Once we are past that, though, we're on, like, the bridge you can see, as we just have a few more enemies to go before we reach the end, and it's time for the final boss encounter. For the final boss, they have that shoulder tackle you're going to want to block, as well as when they stick their arm up, you want to make sure you immediately block and keep blocking, because there's going to be multiple projectiles shot at. Other than that, there really isn't anything special about the fight compared to the other ones. It's pretty much still more of the same of this Rock'em Sock'em Robots-like battle. When you do fill up that meter, use it. You may have to use multiple special moves during this fight. But once their health is drained, you can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Chojin Sentai Jetman on the Famicom. So there you have it, Chojin Sentai Jetman for the Nintendo Famicom. Of course, this never made it to North America, though it is a very fun game that I would have loved having in my NES library. I've really loved playing it over the last few years since I discovered it. I wanted to start covering Mighty Morphin Power Rangers games, so I figured this was a great way to start that off. At the end, we see Angel Time. This game was published by Angel in Japan, which was another part of Bandai. Bandai released several games under the Angel title. Mostly, though, were related to licensed products, such as this, or anime. At the title screen, you can press AB Start to get the hardest and hard difficulties, and you can play the game all over again. The hardest has only 1 hit point, which is a real challenge for sure. Maybe I'll cover that down the road at some point. With that, though, it's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.